The story of the printing press is one of the most important and transformative chapters in human history. A tale that begins long before the invention of Johannes Gutenberg's movable type press in the mid-15th century, because to truly understand the revolutionary impact of the printing press, one must first appreciate the ways in which human beings communicated, recorded, and preserved knowledge before this invention existed, and how the limitations of earlier systems shaped the course of civilization. For thousands of years, information was passed down orally, with stories, laws, traditions, and religious teachings memorized and transmitted from generation to generation. But the fragility of oral transmission meant that knowledge could be altered, forgotten, or lost entirely, and so the development of writing systems, beginning with cuneiform in Mesopotamia around 3200 BCE and hieroglyphics in Egypt shortly after, marked one of the first great leaps in humanity's quest to preserve ideas in a tangible and lasting form. Yet even with writing, the process of duplication remained painstakingly slow, requiring scribes to copy texts by hand onto clay tablets, papyrus scrolls, or parchment, a laborious process that consumed tremendous time and resources and therefore limited the availability of written works to elites, priests, kings, and a small class of scholars. In places like China, the search for more efficient ways of reproducing texts led to the development of woodblock printing during the Tang Dynasty around the 7th century CE, in which entire pages were carved in reverse onto wooden blocks, inked, and pressed onto paper, allowing for multiple copies to be produced at once. And by the 11th century, Bai Sheng, a Chinese artisan, had invented movable type using clay characters, though this innovation did not spread widely at the time due to the complexity of the Chinese writing system with its thousands of characters. But nevertheless, these early advances laid important groundwork for what was to come in Europe. Meanwhile, in Europe prior to the mid-1400s, books were primarily produced in monasteries where monks working by candlelight meticulously transcribed religious texts, most notably the Bible. And while universities that emerged in the 12th and 13th centuries created a demand for more books, the process remained expensive and slow, meaning that literacy was restricted to the wealthy, the clergy, and small educated classes. And it was against this backdrop that Johannes Gutenberg, a German inventor from Mainz, introduced a revolutionary new method that would forever change the world, combining several key innovations. He developed durable movable metal type that could be arranged and rearranged to form words and sentences. He adapted screw press technology from winemaking to apply even pressure on the inked type against paper. And he devised a new oil-based ink that adhered better to metal type and paper than the water-based inks previously used. And around 1450, Gutenberg completed his press, leading to the production of his famous Gutenberg Bible in the 1450s, a monumental work that demonstrated not only the efficiency of his invention, but also the breathtaking possibilities of mass-producing books. For while scribes could produce perhaps a single manuscript in months or years, Gutenberg's press could generate hundreds of nearly identical copies in a fraction of the time. The printing press spread rapidly across Europe, first to cities like Strasbourg, Cologne, Venice, and Paris, and soon to virtually every intellectual and commercial hub. And within 50 years of Gutenberg's Bible, millions of books had been printed, covering not just religious texts, but also classical literature, scientific treatises, legal codes, and practical manuals, an explosion of knowledge dissemination unprecedented in human history. And this revolution had profound consequences in virtually every sphere of life. In religion, the press made possible the Protestant Reformation. For when Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the church door in Wittenberg in 1517, his critique of the Catholic Church would likely have remained a local dispute. But thanks to the printing press, his ideas were copied, translated, and distributed across Europe in weeks, fueling a movement that reshaped Christianity and challenged the authority of Rome. In education, the availability of books expanded literacy, encouraged critical thinking, and reduced dependence on the oral teaching of authorities, empowering individuals to read and interpret texts for themselves, which in turn fostered intellectual independence. In science, figures such as Copernicus, Galileo, and Newton benefited immensely from the ability to circulate and debate new theories, widely sparking a scientific revolution that fundamentally altered humanity's understanding of the universe. Politically, rulers and governments saw the potential of the press, both as a means of propaganda and as a dangerous tool that could spread dissent, leading to attempts at censorship and control. Yet the genie was out of the bottle, and the democratization of knowledge proved impossible to fully suppress. Economically, the printing industry created new professions, from printers and typesetters to publishers and booksellers, while also reducing the cost of books, making them accessible to merchants, artisans, and even some peasants. And culturally, the press nourished the Renaissance, reviving interest in classical works and enabling the spread of humanist ideals across borders. By the 16th and 17th centuries, newspapers began to emerge, first in Germany and the Low Countries, then in England and France, creating a new medium for informing the public, fostering political debate, and eventually supporting the rise of democratic institutions by keeping citizens engaged with news and ideas. As European colonial powers expanded abroad, they carried the press with them, introducing it to the Americas, Africa, and Asia, where it played different roles depending on local contexts, from supporting missionary work and colonial administration to fueling resistance and nationalist movements. By the 18th century, the press had become integral to the Enlightenment, spreading the works of philosophers like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Locke, who challenged monarchies and inspired revolutions in America and France. And in the 19th century, technological improvements, such as the steam-powered press lithography and later rotary presses, allowed for even faster and cheaper printing, feeding the rise of mass media penny. Newspapers serialized novels and popular magazines, which in turn created a shared culture across nations and helped shape public opinion on a scale never before possible. While the spread of public education and compulsory schooling in many countries during the 19th century created a vast new audience of literate readers, further entwining the fate of the printing press with the advancement of society. In the 20th century, the invention of offset printing, photo typesetting, and eventually digital typesetting continued to enhance efficiency, while the rise of radio, television, and later the internet introduced new competitors to the printed word. Yet the press remained foundational for newspapers, books, pamphlets, and flyers, still served as indispensable vehicles for information and culture, from wartime propaganda to underground literature resisting authoritarian regimes. Even as the 21st century ushered in the digital revolution with e-books, online journalism, and social media, the legacy of the printing press remains evident, because the very idea of mass communication, the ability to replicate ideas rapidly and distribute them to broad audiences, was pioneered by Gutenberg's invention. And though the physical book faces challenges in a world dominated by screens, it continues to endure, cherished both as a vessel of knowledge and as a cultural artifact. In reflecting on the history of the printing press, it becomes clear that this invention did not merely introduce a new technology, but fundamentally transformed human society, breaking the monopoly of elites over knowledge, accelerating the exchange of ideas, fueling revolutions in religion, science, politics, and art, and laying the foundation for the modern world we inhabit today. For without the printing press, the Renaissance might not have spread so widely, the Reformation might have faltered, the scientific revolution might have been delayed, and the Enlightenment might never have ignited the movements that gave birth to modern democracies. Thus, the printing press stands not only as a technical achievement, but also as a symbol of humanity's enduring quest to share, preserve, and expand knowledge, shaping our collective destiny for centuries to come, and reminding us that the written word, once liberated from the confines of scarcity, possesses the power to change the world.